Nadia Hussein was 16 when she decided Adrian Voss was the only person in the world who truly understood darkness. That was the word she used. Darkness. She wrote it in her journal 14 times between January and March of that year, sometimes in red ink, sometimes with little stars around it, the way a girl who has never actually touched darkness writes about it, like it is a cologne she wants to try on. Adrian Voss was 24. He ran an online community called Crimson Court, a corner of the internet where people who liked Victorian aesthetics, Gothic literature, and the general idea of being mysterious gathered to post photographs of themselves in black coats and talk about Nietzsche without having read more than 3 pages. Adrian had started it at 19. By the time Nadia found it at 14, it had 60,000 followers. By 16, she had been a member for 2 years, had memorized every post he had ever made, and had convinced herself that his style of responding to her comments, dry, a little contemptuous, occasionally impressed, meant something. His username was Vampire King. Nobody called him that sarcastically. That was the thing. He had a real face. She had seen it in photographs: sharp jaw, dark eyes that looked like they had decided long ago that most things were beneath them, hair that fell across his forehead in a way that made girls in the comments write things like "I am not okay" and "Sir, this is a Wendy's." Nadia had read every single one of those comments. She had felt a hot, specific resentment for each girl who wrote them, and then felt embarrassed about the resentment, and then felt resentment about the embarrassment. That was the cycle. 16 felt like that, a loop you could not find the exit of. Her best friend Zara had told her, more than once, in the patient tone of someone who has repeated herself into exhaustion, that Adrian Voss was an adult man on the internet who did not know she existed. He replied to my comment last Tuesday, Nadia had said. With one word. It was a meaningful word. Zara had looked at her the way doctors look at patients who insist their symptoms aren't symptoms. Nadia. He said, noted. In context, there is no context. But there was always context, in Nadia's version of the story. There was the time he had posted a piece of dark poetry at 2 a.m. And she had been the third person to comment, and her comment had been thoughtful, and he had liked it. There was the time she had sent a private message asking about one of the books he recommended, House of Leaves, and he had replied with 4 sentences. 4 whole sentences. She had screenshot it. She still had the screenshot. She had looked at it so many times the image had a crease in it, which was not how images worked, but grief and obsession have their own physics. Then, in April, Adrian announced that Crimson Court was hosting its first real-world event. A Gothic art exhibition in the city, a Saturday evening, entry by community membership. 200 people. He would be there in person. Nadia's mother thought she was going to an art gallery with Zara. That was true. It was just not the whole truth. She wore black, obviously. She had spent 3 weeks deciding on the specific black, not costume black, not Halloween black, but the kind of black that said I have read things and felt things and I am not like the other girls here, which was exactly what every girl in the room was also trying to say with their specific black. The venue was a converted warehouse. The walls were hung with oil paintings that looked like they had been made by people who had been genuinely sad, not performatively sad, and there was a difference, and the best paintings made you feel it. Zara stayed close. She had come because she loved Nadia and because, in her words, if you do something embarrassing I want to have witnessed it with my own eyes. Nadia had laughed. She had not thought it would be embarrassing. She saw Adrian across the room at 8:17. That was the precise time because she checked her phone the moment she saw him, not for any rational reason, just because her body needed to do something with its hands. He was taller in person. That was the first thing. The photographs had not lied, but photographs flatten things, compress them. They had not conveyed the way he moved through a room like he had decided in advance that the room was his. He was talking to 2 men, wine glass loose in one hand, laughing at something in a way that did not reach his eyes because Adrian Voss had made not reaching his eyes into a personality trait he was very proud of. Nadia stood near a painting of a woman drowning in silver water and told herself she was looking at the painting. She was not looking at the painting. Zara squeezed her arm. You don't have to talk to him. I know. He's just a person. I know. Nadia, I know, Zara. She went to talk to him at 9. It had taken her 43 minutes to cross a room, which is either nothing or everything depending on how old you are and what you're carrying. He was alone for approximately 90 seconds, refreshing his wine near the back table, and she walked up to him with her heart doing something in her chest that had no clinical name but should have something between freefall and electrical short, and she said his name. He looked at her. He looked at her the way people look at strangers at parties. Polite. Blank. Briefly curious. I'm Nadia, she said. I'm in Crimson Court. We've talked a few times. I commented on your poetry piece in March. The one about the hollow city. Something shifted in his face. Not warmth. Just recognition, the kind that doesn't particularly care what it's recognizing. Okay, he said. What did you think of the exhibition? And that was the conversation. For 20 minutes, that was the conversation: art, the community, a book he was reading, another book she had also read, and she felt herself shining, genuinely shining, because he was responding, he was asking follow-up questions, and she had been right about the connection, she had been right this whole time, she told him. Later, she would not be able to reconstruct exactly what words she used. Memory does that, it protects you from the precise shape of your own worst moments by blurring the edges. What she remembered was that she said something about feeling understood for the first time. About how his writing had gotten her through a dark year. About how she had thought about him a lot. About how she thought what they had in the community was something more than. He interrupted her. Not rudely. That was the thing that made it worse. He didn't laugh cruelly. He didn't sneer. He just did something with his mouth that was half smile and half the face of a man who has heard something he finds very, very small, and he said, "You're a kid." She said, "I'm 16. That's what I said." The silence lasted long enough to be a physical thing. Something with weight. "This is sweet," he said, and he said it like sweet was a synonym for negligible. This is sweet. But what you're describing is a fantasy. It's what kids do online. They build up a whole story and they think it's real. He tilted his wine glass slightly. It's not real. You don't know me. You know a character I built. Nadia said nothing. Her mouth was open and nothing was coming out. You'll grow out of it, he said. Not unkindly. That was the worst part. He was being gentle about it in the way people are gentle when they are discussing something they find genuinely trivial. It's cute. Enjoy being a teenager. But don't confuse online attention for connection. That's not. He stopped. Reconsidered. It's childish. That word. Childish. He said it the way you'd say charming or harmless, something you'd pat on the head and send in the other direction. He excused himself 3 sentences later. He had someone else to talk to. He did not look back. Nadia found Zara near the drowning woman painting. She did not say anything for a while. She stood there and looked at the silver water and the woman going under and the way the painter had made the water look soft, the way drowning looks soft from the outside. "Do you want to go?" Zara said. "No," Nadia said. She stayed for another hour. She looked at every painting. She ate 2 crackers from the refreshment table. She made sure her face was arranged into something neutral every time Adrian Voss was within her peripheral vision, which was 8 times, she counted, not on purpose, just the way you count things when you are trying very hard not to feel something. On the train home, Zara held her hand. Nadia did not cry. Not on the train. Not when she got home. Not when her mother asked how the gallery was and she said fine and went upstairs. She sat on her bed with her phone face down on her pillow and she looked at her wall, where she had taped a printout of one of Adrian's photographs, the artistic one, black and white, the one where he was standing in a library looking like the whole weight of literature was something he carried effortlessly. She took it down. She did not tear it up. She was 16, not dramatic. She folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer under some notebooks, the way you deal with things that you are not ready to throw away but can no longer afford to look at. Then, she opened her journal, the one with red ink, the one with darkness written 14 times, and she wrote one sentence. He called it childish. She stared at that sentence for a long time. Then, she wrote underneath it, maybe it was asterisk. She closed the journal. She turned off her light. She lay in the dark and breathed in, felt the specific shame of having misread something enormous, of having built a whole cathedral inside your chest for a person who did not even know there was a cathedral, who would have found the cathedral mildly amusing if he had, who had called the cathedral cute and moved on to the next conversation. She did not delete her account on Crimson Court that night. She kept going back, actually, for almost 3 more months, but differently. Quieter. Like someone who returns to the scene not because they hope for something but because they need to watch themselves not hope. She stopped commenting on his posts. She started commenting on other people's posts. She started, slowly, talking to other members, people her own age, people who were also 16 and also felt a specific kind of darkness they couldn't name yet. She kept the folded photograph in her desk drawer. She did not look at it. But she kept it. Because she was 16, and that is the age when you have not yet learned that some things do not deserve the dignity of being kept. That lesson was coming. It was just not here yet. She did not speak to Adrian Voss again that year. She watched him post. She watched him respond to other people's confessions with the same dry, mild dismissal he had given hers. She watched other girls make the same mistake she had made and she felt a complicated knot of feelings she could not untangle, relief that she was not alone, fury that she was not special, and a small ugly thing that felt like satisfaction, which she was ashamed of. One night in November, 6 months after the gallery, she opened her journal again. Turned to the page with those 2 sentences. He called it childish, maybe it was asterisk. She read them both. Then, she wrote a 3rd line. But, I'm not done growing, asterisk. She did not know yet what she meant by that. She just felt it was true. She wrote it anyway, with the instinct of someone planting something in ground that is still too cold, not because she expects the spring, but because she needs to believe the spring is coming. She closed the journal. She went to sleep. The spring was, in fact, coming. She just had to get through the rest of the growing first. 2 years is a long time when you are in the middle of growing up and a very short time when you look back at it. Nadia Hussein was 18 when she moved into a college dormitory in a city 3 hours from home, with 2 suitcases and a box of books and the private, unspoken intention of becoming someone who did not still occasionally check Adrian Voss's profile at 11 at night out of a habit she had not fully broken. She had not told anyone about that habit. Not even Zara. The dormitory room smelled like fresh paint and someone else's fabric softener. Her roommate, a girl named Priya who had arrived first and taken the bed by the window without asking, had already put up fairy lights and a poster of a French film that Nadia had not seen. They introduced themselves in the cautious way of 2 people who have to share 60 square feet and have not yet decided whether they like each other, and then went to unpack with their backs politely turned. Later, Priya would become one of the most important people in Nadia's life. But, right now she was just a stranger with good taste in posters. Nadia's first month at college was disorienting in the specific way that freedom is always disorienting when you haven't had enough of it yet, like a muscle you haven't used that shakes when you finally try it. She had choices. So many choices, about everything, all day, with no one checking in. She could eat at midnight. She could sit in the library until 3 in the morning. She could go to a party, or not go to a party, or go to 2 parties in one night, or never go to a party again, and no one was keeping score. She made the mistake, early on, of filling all that freedom with structure. She packed her schedule so tightly there was no room for herself in it. She joined 3 clubs in the first 2 weeks. She studied before she needed to. She called her mother every day. Zara, over a video call in October, said, "You're running." Nadia said, "I'm being productive." From what? Nadia adjusted the angle of her laptop and did not answer. She found Adrian's profile on a Thursday evening in November, which is the most bleak of evenings, the one where the semester has gone on long enough to be exhausting but not long enough to be over. She had not looked in almost 4 months, which she had considered a victory, and then, here she was sitting on her dorm bed with her phone in her hand and Crimson Court open and Adrian Voss at the top of the feed like he had been waiting. He had posted a new photograph. Still gorgeous in all the ways that had once made her hands go stupid. Still looking at the camera like the camera should be grateful for the opportunity. The caption was something about decay and beauty, the kind of thing that read as profound at 16 and reads as very rehearsed at 18. She read it twice. She felt almost nothing. Not the clean, victorious nothing she had imagined feeling when she pictured this moment, back when she was 16 and promised herself she would get here. Just a quiet, slightly tired nothing. Like looking at a house you grew up in from the outside and finding it smaller than you remembered. Not bad. Just smaller. She put her phone down. She picked it back up. She put it down again. She went to the library. That was where she met Eli Marsh. He was sitting at the table she usually sat at, the one near the third-floor window that looked out onto a courtyard with a single sad oak tree that had lost most of its leaves. She had not realized she considered it her table until someone was sitting at it. She stood there with her books for a moment, doing the internal calculation of whether to find another table or say something, and then Eli Marsh looked up. He had the face of someone who spent a lot of time reading and not quite enough time sleeping, and the expression of someone who had been interrupted mid-thought and wasn't sure how to feel about it. Brown eyes. A pen behind his ear. A coffee cup that had probably been warmed 2 hours ago. He said, "Sorry, is this your?" "No," she said. "I don't know." She sat across from him because all the other tables were full. They did not speak for the rest of the evening. They just sat and worked in the same square of lamplight, two people with separate interior lives occupying the same space without incident. When she left at midnight, she said goodnight. He said goodnight. She walked back to the dormitory and did not think about him once. She sat back at that table the next Thursday. He was there again. They did not acknowledge the coincidence. They just nodded and opened their books. This continued for 3 weeks before they actually talked, and when they talked it was about the book she was reading. She had left it face up and he had commented on it, said he'd read it, said he thought the second act fell apart, said he was wrong about that later and had to revise his opinion, which she found interesting, the willingness to say I was wrong about that later. That was the thing about Eli. He said things like that without embarrassment. I got that wrong. I changed my mind. I didn't understand it at first. She had not met many people who did that. November became December. December became the winter break, which she spent at home with her family and Zara, and which felt shorter and stranger than she expected, like coming back to a room you had rearranged in your memory and finding the furniture in different places. She told Zara about Eli. Not as a confession. Just as information. Is he cute? Zara said. Yes. But, that's not the is he the library guy? Yes. Every week for a month and you haven't exchanged numbers yet? We talk. Nadia. What? Zara gave her the look. The patient, exhausted, doctor with the patient look. You're allowed to like someone. Nadia looked at her hands. I know. You're allowed to like someone who is actually available and actually your age and actually. Zara stopped. He is your age, right? He's 20. I'm 18. Good. Normal. Zara picked up her tea. You're allowed. Nadia did not say anything, but something inside her that had been held at a careful angle shifted slightly, like a window that had been painted shut and someone had just run a knife along the edge of it. She did not say, I'm scared I'll misread it again. She did not need to. Zara already knew. Second semester. Nadia came back to campus with a resolution she had not written down and had not told anyone. It was small and internal and it went like this: be present. Not productive. Not busy. Not structured. Just there. In the room she was in. With the people in front of her. It did not work perfectly. Nothing works perfectly the first time you try it. But she went back to the library and Eli was there and they talked for 3 hours that evening about things that had nothing to do with books, about his family in Bristol, about her mother's cooking, about a documentary they had both watched separately and arrived at completely different conclusions about, which turned into an argument, which turned into laughter, which turned into the specific kind of quiet that follows laughter and is somehow warmer than the laughter itself. She walked back to the dormitory with her scarf pulled up to her nose in the February cold and, she thought, with some surprise, I had a good time, not I performed having a good time. Not I looked like someone who was enjoying herself. Actually had one. In her own body, in real time, with a real person. She stopped on the path for a second. The campus was quiet. One lamp throwing orange light onto the snow. Her breath coming out in small white clouds. She stood there and let herself feel it. Then, she kept walking. Priya noticed before she did. You're different on Thursdays, Priya said one morning, not looking up from her laptop. Nadia looked at her. What? You come back from the library and you're lighter. You talk more. You eat the good crackers without hiding them from me. I wasn't hiding them, Nadia. Fine. Priya finally looked up. Library guy? Nadia did not answer. Priya smiled the smile of someone who has already filed this information away. Okay. That was it. That was the whole conversation. But it sat in Nadia for the rest of the day, the confirmation that something was visible. That she was not imagining it. That this thing she was feeling, which she had been so carefully not naming, was real enough to be seen by someone who wasn't even looking for it. She thought about 16-year-old Nadia on that train home from the gallery, holding Zara's hand and not crying. She thought about the photograph in the desk drawer. She thought about Childish, how that word had settled into her like a stone, how she had carried it all this time, how she had let it make her careful and quiet about every feeling that came after, how she had walked around her own heart like it was something that might embarrass her. She was 18 and she was tired of being careful in that particular way. She did not have a grand declaration. Life does not work in grand declarations. That was a thing she knew now, at 18, that she had not known at 16. Real things happen in small moves. Small, slightly awkward, genuine moves. She texted Eli on a Sunday, a day they had never seen each other, and asked if he wanted to walk to the farmer's market. She had heard there was a good one near campus. He replied in 3 minutes, yes. I've been meaning to go. 10, she said, 10, she put her phone down and sat with it for a moment, the simplicity of it. No analysis. No screenshots. No reading of subtext into noted. Just, yes, 10, done. That was what real felt like. Not fireworks. Not darkness and poetry and the thrill of someone who could not be touched. Just, yes. 10, I will be there. I want to see you. She went to the farmer's market. Eli was already there when she arrived, standing in front of a stall selling bread, reading the labels like bread had lore he needed to understand. She laughed when she saw him. He turned and laughed back. They bought bread. They walked. They talked. She did not once check her phone. She deleted Crimson Court from her phone that spring. Not in a dramatic gesture, no announcement, no final post, no burning of the bridge. She just removed the app one Tuesday evening when she was clearing out things she did not use anymore. Adrian Voss's profile disappeared from her feed and she felt the absence for approximately 40 seconds and then made a cup of tea. The desk drawer at home still had the folded photograph. She thought about it occasionally. Less and less. She did not rush to throw it away. She was learning, slowly, that you do not have to be in a hurry to discard every piece of who you used to be. You can just let the old things become small. You can just grow around them. In May, she called her mother to tell her she was doing well. Her mother said she sounded different. Different how? Nadia asked. Her mother was quiet for a moment. Like yourself, she said finally. Like the version of yourself you always were, underneath. Nadia was sitting by the window of her dorm, the one Priya had claimed in September, the one they now shared equally, because that was how time worked. Things that started as someone else's became yours too if you stayed long enough. Yeah, she said. I think so. She looked out the window. The sad oak tree in the courtyard had its leaves back. She had not noticed until just now. She stayed on the call with her mother for a long time, doing nothing in particular, just being there, present, unstructured, herself, and, outside the window the evening came in the way it does in May, slow and golden, like it has nowhere to be and no one to impress. It was, she thought, a very good evening. She did not write that in her journal. She just let it be true. At 22, Nadia Hussein lived in a flat that was slightly too small and completely hers. It was on the 4th floor of a building with an unreliable lift, 3 plants she had kept alive for over a year which she considered a personal achievement, and a kitchen window that, at the right angle in the morning, filled the whole room with gold light. She had learned to eat breakfast in that light. She had made a ritual of it: coffee, something with eggs, the window, the morning. Just her and the morning, no phone, no noise, 15 minutes where the day had not become anything yet. She had graduated. She was working. She was writing not in a red ink journal anymore, but pieces that other people read, that other people found something in. She had published 4 essays in 2 years, small publications, nothing enormous, but real, named, out in the world where strangers could hold them. She and Eli were not together anymore. That had ended at the close of her 2nd year, not badly, not with a wound, just with the quiet mutual understanding that they had been exactly what the other person needed at exactly the right time and had arrived at the end of that chapter together. They still texted occasionally. He was in Bristol. He was happy. She was happy that he was happy, and that was the whole story. Zara had gotten engaged in November. Nadia was the maid of honor. She had given a speech at the engagement party that made Zara's mother cry and Zara throw a dinner roll at her. Life was full and warm and irregular, the way it is when you are actually living it rather than holding it at arm's length. She had not thought about Adrian Voss in months. This is not an exaggeration. Months. Genuine, verified months where his name did not appear in her thoughts once. He had become the kind of thing you realize you've stopped thinking about only when something brings him back, and, even then, the bringing back is mild, distant, the memory of a weather pattern you once found dramatic and now just recognize as weather. The message came on a Wednesday. She was at her kitchen table with her laptop and the leftover coffee from breakfast, revising a piece that was due on Friday, when her phone lit up with a notification she did not recognize at first. Not a number she had saved. Not a format she expected. She looked at it. Hey! It's Adrian Voss. From Crimson Court. I know it's been a long time, she stared at the screen. The coffee was getting cold. She read it again. Not because she had missed something the first time. Just the way you read things twice when your brain is trying to match what it is seeing to a category that no longer exists. Then, she put the phone face down and finished her paragraph. She picked it up again an hour later. Hey! It's Adrian Voss. From Crimson Court. I know it's been a long time, there was a follow-up, since 17 minutes after the first. I've been thinking about the community a lot lately. Going through some things. I came across your name and thought I'd reach out. You were always one of the more thoughtful ones, she read one of the more thoughtful ones and waited for something to happen in her chest. Some echo of the thing that had lived there for 2 years of her adolescence. The coffee was cold. She made herself a fresh cup. This is the thing about feelings that used to be enormous, they leave behind an outline, not a wound. She could locate the shape of what she had felt at 16, the cathedral she had built, the specific shame of having it called Childish, the train ride home, Zara's hand, she could place all of it clearly, like furniture in a room she no longer lived in. She knew exactly what it had been. She knew exactly how large it had felt. She just didn't feel it anymore. She was not angry, either. She had expected, when she imagined this moment, and she had imagined it, at 17, at 18, the way you rehearse conversations with people who have hurt you, imagining the cutting thing you'd say, the cold silence you'd give. She had expected some residue of fury. The sweet, familiar anger she had once reached for the way other people reach for painkillers. There was no anger. Just a quiet, factual noting of a thing that had happened. Adrian Voss had messaged her. She was 22. She felt nothing. She called Zara. He messaged me, she said, when Zara picked up. Zara's voice did something. Who? Adrian Voss. A long pause. The vampire, yes. Another pause, this one with the distinct texture of someone choosing their words carefully so they do not say something in the first 5 seconds that they will spend the rest of the call defending. What did he want? He's going through something. He wanted to reach out. Said I was one of the more thoughtful ones. Zara stopped. Started again. He said, thoughtful ones. Yes. The pause this time was so long that Nadia looked at her phone to make sure the call had not dropped. Then, Zara said, with the precision of someone setting down a very heavy object very carefully, what are you going to do? Nadia was standing in her kitchen, in the gold morning light, the fresh coffee in her hand. She looked out the window. The city was doing its city things below, people moving, a bus going by, 2 pigeons on the ledge across the way having what appeared to be a significant disagreement. Nothing, she said. Nothing? Nothing. She took a sip of the coffee. I'm going to finish my piece. I have a deadline Friday. Another beat. Then, Zara let out a breath that was half laugh, half something that sounded like relief. Good, she said. Good. That's exactly right. She did not answer the message that day. She did not answer it the next day either, not as a strategy, not as a punishment, not as a power move. She was just busy. Her piece was due Friday and she had not finished the 3rd section, and the 3rd section was the hardest one, the one where she had to say something true rather than just something interesting. She had learned the difference in 2 years of writing, how much longer it takes to say the true thing, how uncomfortable it sits in the body before it comes out, how much cleaner everything feels once it does. She finished the piece on Thursday night and sent it at 11:47 and then sat back in her chair and felt the clean satisfaction of a thing completed and sent into the world. She picked up her phone. She reread his messages. All of them, including the 3rd one he had sent 2 days after the first 2, which said, just in case this went to spam or something. No pressure, asterisk. She read no pressure and recognized it for what it was, the same energy as noted, the same performance of casualness from someone who was not actually casual. She had not been able to read that at 16. She could read it very clearly now. She put the phone down. She thought about what she had felt when she had first seen his message, that quiet, factual nothing. She had been worried, on some level, that the nothing was dishonest, that underneath it there was something she was suppressing or performing. But it had stayed nothing for 4 days now. She had gone about her life, coffee, writing, a dinner with Priya who was in the city for work, a phone call with her mother, a walk in the park on an afternoon that had no specific reason for being good and was good anyway, and Adrian Voss had remained exactly what he was. A person she had once made into something enormous. A person who had found her, at 16, small. A person who, at 24, had thought the word childish was a correction rather than a cruelty. A person who was now 30 and messaging women he had dismissed at 16 because he was going through something. He was just a person. He had always been just a person. She had not been able to see that at 16 because she had been building a cathedral, and it is very hard to see clearly when you are busy constructing something with your own hands out of need and longing and the desperation to be understood. She had been building the cathedral. He had not known it existed. He had called it childish and gone back to his wine. She had lived in the ruins of it for 2 years. And then, she had built something else. Something she had not named for a long time, not a cathedral, not a monument, not anything devotional. Just a life. Her life. The essays, the flat, the plants she had kept alive, the breakfast light, the Fridays when she sent good work into the world, the friends who held her hand on trains without being asked, the 20 minutes every morning where the day had not become anything yet and she sat in the quiet and was simply unbothered herself. She owed that life nothing that would cost it peace. She did not delete the messages. That felt too much like drama, like a gesture for an audience. She just left them there. Unanswered. Becoming older by the day. There was no symbolic act, no ceremony, no final line in her red ink journal. She went to bed that night. She woke up the next morning. She made coffee. She ate breakfast in the gold light. The messages sat unread in a thread at the bottom of her phone and she did not think about them. That was the whole ending. Not a confrontation. Not a speech. Not the cutting line she had rehearsed at 17 in the version of this story where she had still needed something from him, his acknowledgement, his regret, some confirmation from him that she had been worth more than a dismissal. She did not need any of that. She had not needed it for a long time. She had just not known yet that she did not need it, and there is a stage of healing that looks like anger and a stage that looks like distance and a stage that looks like you are fine and a stage, the last one, the real one, that looks like you genuinely forgot to check. She had genuinely forgotten to check. Her essay ran in a publication the following week. It was about something entirely unrelated to any of this. It was about the specific quality of light in cities just before rain, how it changes the color of everything, makes familiar streets look temporary, like a backdrop being changed between scenes. A stranger messaged her to say it had made them stop on their morning commute and look up. She read that message 4 times. It made her feel something warm, real, landing in her chest with a satisfying weight. She saved the message. She would probably look at it again later. She put her phone down and went back to what she had been doing, which was making a cup of tea and being unremarkably, solidly, entirely present in her own small flat on her own unremarkable Thursday. She did not think about who had called her childish. She was too busy being the person she had grown into, which was a person who lit up strangers' mornings with words she had worked hard for, who kept plants alive, who ate breakfast in the gold light, who did not need a cathedral because she was no longer 16 and, standing in the cold outside someone else's house, looking through the windows, believing the way you only believe when you are that young and that hungry and that sure that someone else holds the key, that the warmth was inside and not, in fact, already hers. It had always been hers. She had just needed the years to find out. Outside the window, the city did its city things. Below, someone was walking a dog. The dog was small and ridiculous and deeply pleased with itself, trotting down the pavement like it had invented the concept of a good day. Nadia watched it for a moment, smiling in the way you smile at things that ask nothing from you and give you something anyway. Then, she turned back to her tea, her table, her window, her life. And that was that.